Because this is, it's a dialogue of the demented at the moment, where the society says, there are some things we really strongly believe in, and if you don't believe in them, well, please do. It's not very assertively made. There's a sort of, well, what happens if I don't? Well, please do. There's no follow-up.
It starts to look like war and conflict, physical violence ends up being inevitable if you can't come to a reasonable...
Yes, and some people do fear that's the case. I don't take as apocalyptic a view as that, but there's a long way for this to run. Of UK Muslims polled after the Charlie Hebdo attacks said that they had some sympathy with the attackers. A third. I happen to be gay, and I'm not delighted by some of the attitudes you can still hear from churches here about homosexuality. But in my own country, there was a poll in 2009 that found among British Muslims 0% thought that you should be tolerant towards homosexuality. And a poll taken 2 years ago found that the majority of British Muslims wanted being gay to be made illegal now. So that's the sort of thing where you just start to worry. Okay, we've seen this off from one direction. What if it comes in another? And what if it benefits and gains from the fact that people are basically not primed to deal with it anymore?
There's a documentary on Netflix, because I watch tons of documentaries on Netflix, especially when I'm on the road, and it's called Welcome to Leith, and it is about a bunch of Nazis or neo-Nazis who moved to a town somewhere in, I don't know, Wyoming, Montana, someplace, and essentially tried to take it over.
Right.
And it's really eye-opening because it makes you wonder, well, what would happen if they tried to do this in my town? Now, it would take a lot of them to take over, Austin or New York or whatever, but in a small town, if you had a massive group of people show up with a particularly dangerous ideology, such that they could actually take over the city council, that they would become the dominant voting bloc.
Right.
What protections do you have?
Right.
In this case, I'm interested in we're looking at exploring this as a project. There are a number of towns that have been taken over by religious ideologies. There are towns that are almost exclusively Mormon or Hasidic Jew, and I have concerns about the constitutional rights of the individuals who live in those towns. Sure. Because in the States, the default is, oh, well, that, you really can't have any power, because we've got the Constitution and it's there to protect us. And as a reminder, you can in fact run for office anywhere in the United States if you're an atheist. Please stop spreading around that thing of my state constitution says you must believe. Yes, that was all settled by the Supreme Court in the 50s and then fought a couple other times as well. But you can run for office. But we had to fight it in court just to show what the Constitution says. And if they could take over a town, I get why people are terrified of that. Wouldn't it be a more practical solution? I don't know how this applies in the UK, but to just make sure that our laws are such that people can exercise their religious freedom, but they can't, there's the old joke about the Constitution, two wolves and a sheep are arguing over what's for dinner. Sure. And the Constitution, or the democracy, is what allows them all to vote, and the Constitution is what guarantees that the sheep's not going to be dinner. And it seems that we can enforce those ideas so that people can have their preferred culture, provided it can coexist with the surroundings.
Yeah, the moment that's what we're really struggling with across Europe at the moment, is to work out where the moments are where you tread over the rights of others in a way that's unacceptable, and also then what you do about it. Because this is, it's a dialogue of the demented at the moment, where the society says, there are some things we really strongly believe in, and if you don't believe in them, well, please do. It's not very assertively made. There's a sort of, well, what happens if I don't? Well, please do. there's no follow-up.
It starts to look like war and conflict and physical violence ends up being inevitable if you can't
Yeah.
come to a reasonable...
Yes, and some people do fear that's the case. I don't take as apocalyptic a view as that, but there's a long way for this to run, and it doesn't all go in a good direction.
Wow, those are some sobering statistics that Douglas Murray was pointing out about British Muslims. Now, in terms of were they British born, British raised, British immigrants that were Muslim, but to have that type of still saying in terms of, for homosexuality or for gay marriage, and to be against it or to outlaw it, or for, gays to be jailed. Wow. That's something that, of course, Douglas Murray says, that, Britain and Europe is struggling with. But it's not just coming from, the Muslims that are there. As Douglas also points out, that there's Christian churches and denominations that have the same feeling. I don't think they want to jail people that are gay or jail people that get married, homosexuals that get married. I don't think the Christian denominations are, going that far. But as far as trying to outlaw it, yes, I mean, that's certainly on that side. And then plus you might have some other, groups, some vocal minorities that are against that. And then when Matt Dillahunty was talking about, what he was pointing out, I think you watched too many Netflix shows about towns being taken over by biker groups or zombies or those kind of things. Now, that is true. He was saying that there are some towns that have majority Hasidic Jews, or towns that are, predominantly or almost 100%, Mormon. There is a town, I believe, in Michigan, Hamtramck, if I'm pronouncing it right, Hamtramck, that has an all-Muslim majority. I think all Muslim. It's 100% Muslim voted in town council. But none of these instances of where this has happened, they've trodden or ripped up the Constitution, shredded it, not allowed the civil liberties of the townspeople to do whatever they are allowed to do under the banner of the Constitution. Now, you may not agree with their policies, but they haven't instituted religious policies that are not allowing the religious convictions of the people in the town, to be basically abrogated. I don't think that's been occurring, not in this day with social media and those things going on. But then Douglas basically comes back and he sort of is asking the question, well, we basically say that there's a line that we don't want you to cross over in terms of cultural norms, in terms of what is established as British European culture, or what we, what we in Britain say that this is the line that we don't want you to cross over with whatever it is that you're thinking to cross over it with. But he says, we don't basically come out and say, what happens if you do cross that line? And I say, what are you going to do if we do? Well, you better not. Well, if we do, what's going to happen? So both sides are sort of playing this tug of war game, not willing to give anything right now, but sort of maybe taunting each other to say, okay, well, what are you going to do if we do that? Well, you better not. It's like two kids on a kindergarten, except this is being played out at the adult level. And, Dillahunty comes out and says, well, that's sort of like maybe like a Civil War scenario. Douglas Murray is saying, not quite right now. I'm not that apocalyptic about it. But in the future, these lines, if somebody does decide to cross over onto one side or the other, we push back against that or they push back against ours, then what's going to happen? So, just some serious questions. Unfortunately, in Europe, because we're talking small landmass, concentrated areas where these things are occurring, in these, ghettos that are being basically dominated in these towns and localities, small cities, Leeds, Birmingham, even London, some others, where the majority is maybe 50, 60, 70%, immigrants. in America, because of landmass, and other than, like I said, Dearborn, Michigan is where like 25,000 Arab Americans are, majority Muslim, but there's a lot of Christian Arabs that are run there too. But that's probably the largest population of like a single ethnic group, that are there. But it runs perfectly fine. You've got a lot of Christians living there. You got majority Muslims, obviously. But you know what? We don't have that problem yet here in the United States of America. Anyways, we appreciate you taking the time to watch. You've been watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I've been your host, Dr. Nasir. And if you haven't done so already and you like our content, smash that subscription bell. Like, share, and follow us. You all know what to do. And you can take a look at our other video links. They're here and below. I'll leave you with my final thought, which is, when you're right, you're right. And when you're left, you're wrong. Until next time, folks, take care and stay safe.